Hey everyone, this is the second video in the semantics unit. Last time, we covered the meaning of relationships between words. And in this video, we're going to be looking at the semantic relationships between sentences and how we can define meaning overall. To start, we have semantic relations between sentences. Number one is paraphrase. A paraphrase is a sentence or paragraph that restates, in different words, what a previous statement has said. The key component of a paraphrase is that it uses different words to express the same meaning. Some examples of paraphrase are: Steve gave flowers to Mary, and Mary got flowers from Steve. Both sentences refer to the transfer of flowers from Steve to Mary. Somebody hit my car, and my car was hit by someone is also an example of a paraphrase. Both sentences use different words in different orders to describe the damaging of the narrator's car. And finally, I didn't break the vase versus me breaking the vase was an accident. Unlike the other two, we can see that there's a bit more of a difference in the words used for this, but they both impart the same meaning, which is a vase was broken and it wasn't done on purpose, and it was done by me. The second semantic relationship between sentences is contradiction. A contradiction is where one sentence or paragraph, being true, necessarily requires the other sentence to be false. For example, I like dogs versus I hate dogs. Both sentences cannot be true at the same time. I am alive versus I am dead. Again, I cannot be alive and dead at the same time because, like in the last lecture, zombies don't count. And Steve is handsome / Steve is ugly. Someone can't be both handsome and ugly to the same person at the same time, barring some, I suppose, really complex emotional situations. Note that a pair like I like dogs versus I like cats is not a contradiction because somebody can like both dogs and cats. The third and final type of semantic relation between sentences is that of entailment. Entailment is the relationship where one sentence being true guarantees that the other sentence is true. Steve is John's husband, and Steve and John are married is an example of entailment because if Steve is John's husband, it is necessarily the case that John and Steve are married. Mike works at the grocery store, and Mike is employed is another example of entailment. Mike working at the grocery store entails him being employed, otherwise he wouldn't be working at the grocery store. And Sarah read the book versus Sarah is literate. This is an example of entailment because Sarah must be literate if she's able to read the book. These are the relationships that allow us to talk about what sentences mean and how they relate to each other. Building on these discussions, we can define meaning of individual words or sentences in a number of ways. We've seen a set of relationships, but in the following section, we are going to cover 5 different ways of actually defining meaning, rather than just defining relationships. Number 1, connotation. Connotation is the set of cultural and emotional associations that a person has with a word. Because connotation deals with cultural association, the connotation that one person has with, for example, family, might be a warm and loving support system, while someone else might have the connotation an oppressive and stressful group of people. Another less gloomy example is winter. In Edmonton, we connote winter with snow, negative 40 degrees Celsius weather, and the dark. On the other hand, a Vancouverite might connote winter with rain and temperatures only slightly around freezing. Next is denotation. A word's denotation is the thing that it refers to. You can think about denotation as the dictionary definition of a word. In general, this should not vary between speakers of the same language. At least, not very much. A straightforward example of denotation is the phrase, "the Prime Minister of Canada." The denotation of this is the leader of the ruling party in Canadian Parliament. Another example of denotation is the leader of the Liberal Party of Canada. This phrase denotes the person in control of the Liberal Party of Canada. Importantly, despite the actual person for both of the previous examples being Justin Trudeau, the phrase "the Prime Minister of Canada" and "the leader of the Liberal Party of Canada" do not denote the same thing, as these refer to positions. The Prime Minister of Canada is not always the leader of the Liberal Party of Canada, and it is not always Justin Trudeau. Similarly, terms like unicorn have a denotation, which is an equine or horse-like being with a horn, but don't actually exist in real life. Unless they do, in which case, send me some proof, because I think we're onto something. The next two ways that we can define meaning are somewhat of a pair, and we'll talk about them in conjunction. These are extension and intension. The distinction between intension and extension is an attempt to rectify the fact that a word's denotation does not necessarily equal the word's actual real-world instantiations. In linguistics, a word's intension is its essential components. This is similar or often identical to its denotation. The phrase Prime Minister of Canada has an intention of the leader of Canada's ruling party. These are the essential components of the phrase. Likewise, the intention of the leader of the Liberal Party of Canada is the person elected to run that party. And the intention of unicorn is horse-like animal with a single horn. Conversely, a word's extension is the set of actual, real-world instantiations of the word. The extension of Prime Minister of Canada and the extension of the leader of the Liberal Party of Canada is currently Justin Trudeau. Previously, the Prime Minister of Canada would have been Stephen Harper, and the leader of the Liberal Party of Canada would have had an extension of Justin Trudeau still. The extension of linguist would be the entire set of people who study language. Note that although every term has an intention, not all words have extensions. Unicorn has a clear intention and denotation. When I say the word, you think of a horse-like creature, maybe magical, with a single horn in the middle of its head. However, as far as we know, there is no real-world example of a unicorn. There's no instantiation of it, and so we would say that it has no extension. The final way we will be defining meaning is through the technique of componential analysis. Componential analysis is a process by which we describe words by a set of binary features. When talking about binary features, I'm referring to something with features that are either present or absent. Something like the object is plus animal minus feline. This would tell us that a word is an animal and is not a feline. Alone, this componential analysis would denote the set of every single animal except cats, both domestic and wild. Componential analysis is a formal framework. It is a way of describing things with a particular style and convention of notation. It is not a claim that this is how the mind actually stores information about objects or people. We will see a similar form of framework in the syntax unit, but for now, what matters is that componential analysis uses binary features, plus or minus something, within brackets to describe something. There is no strict set of features that you can or cannot use, particularly for this class. As long as you make them binary, you will get the mark. For example, if you were asked to componentially analyze the term fork, you might say it is plus object, plus cutlery, plus pronged. This would be a fine analysis, and you would get the mark for it. But what you don't want to do is simply say it is plus fork, as you're not really defining anything that way. You're just restating the word. The previous examples have all been nouns, but I want to be clear that this can apply to verbs or adjectives or adverbs or any part of speech. For example, the word run might be decomposed as plus action, plus movement, plus fast, while walk would be something like plus action, plus movement, minus fast. You might be thinking, could I use plus or minus slow instead of plus or minus fast? And the answer is yes. The idea of this technique is that one can split a word into a set of essential and defining features. This concept is used throughout linguistics in a variety of subfields for a variety of reasons. As such, the purpose of learning to do this in semantics is really just to get you used to making these sorts of analyses. As a final note, I'd like to talk about the textbook and how it talks about componential analysis. On page 188, you will see it using features like plus male or minus male as a way to define boy and girl. In addition to being somewhat sexist by choosing male as the default, this sort of analysis is often misconstrued as trans-exclusionary, or as claiming that sex and gender are binary. While I don't know the authors of this textbook personally, and I don't know how they feel about statements like that, I would like to say that if someone really wanted to use componential analysis, they could still say a person is plus male and plus female for a person that is non-binary or feels that they are both genders. Alternatively, they could use plus or minus non-binary, or even minus male, minus female to say that they feel that they are neither gender. Nothing in this framework assumes binary sex or gender. Because we're allowing you to use whatever features you'd like, you have a lot of flexibility in how you do this. The reason I bring this up is because we know, as social scientists, that neither sex nor gender is binary. Although people will often assume that gender is a spectrum, sex is not, the reality is that any definition of sex results in some group of people being described as intersex. You can be born with multiple sets of genitalia. You can be born with multiple sets of chromosomes, or XXY chromosomes, for example. Or there can be hormonal differences which cause various developmental features, causing one person with one set of genitalia to present otherwise. The point that I'm trying to make is that this textbook presents features in a way that might seem trans-exclusionary and male-centric. Whether that is their intention, I can't really say, but for this class, there will be no assumption of these sorts of binaries, and as a result, I have and generally will avoid the use of plus or minus male, female features. And with that, we are at the end of our second video. The third and final video for semantics will be about fuzzy concepts, metaphors, conflation patterns, lexicalization, and grammaticalization. I'll see you all there.